Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The what next for Dereck Chisora? This is something I've been thinking about recently since his loss to Carve. I'm sure there would have been a few people who thought that the Brit, with his 8th career loss, that he might have been done, that he might fade into the background and we wouldn't really see him anymore. But I think if he is willing, there might be a path he can walk to a decent payday or two. But I do think that is heavily dependent, heavily reliant on him sticking with matchroom promoter Eddie Hearn. And that's simply because Hearn has the ability to keep him in the public's eye, keep him in the public gaze, keep him on the cards that are being seen. So I could actually see him becoming another Dave Allen sort of fighter for Hearn. And what I mean by that is Chisora, he's a decent heavyweight who could ably fill slots on some of the bigger matchroom cards, much like Allen has been in the past year or so. And Chisora, for a guy with a career 27-8 record, he remains relatively popular with the boxing public. He's a likable guy, good personality, and he's been in some good fights. And the public generally like his style, and though he might have come up short in some of the big fights, he is respected for having actually taken on the big challenges that he has. So in the short term, while he might have to accept a smaller paycheck and a lower slot on some of these bigger undercards, Chisora, he could put a few wins together and help rebuild his own stock. And I think he'd have to be matched carefully for the next couple of fights to ensure that he not only wins, but he wins well, and that he can generate some buzz. And in terms of the opposition, that's a balancing act, because you don't want it just to be, pulling out a cab driver off the street or someone that no one's ever heard of. So he may actually want to start in his own backyard against, somewhat decent British level opposition. I mean, perhaps the likes of a Gary Cornish or a Sam Sexton, Tom Dallas, Ian Lewison, and possibly even Dave Allen himself. I mean, if Chisora hasn't devolved into a full-blown journeyman, you'd expect him that he should be able to still get past those guys. And I'm not saying all those fights would be easy, but I'm sure if he was at the level that he still thinks he's at and says he's at, that he should be able to handle those guys. Well, hopefully. And you could see that, a win or two against that sort of caliber of opposition, it would likely get him back in the conversation for a more decent fight, a sort of a fighter a level above that. But I don't think he can go back to sort of having tune-up fights, blowing away cab drivers and the like. It just, it wouldn't be good for his career at this point. I think he has to actually take on some mid-level, and really mid-level, high-level journeyman type opposition. And that's not very far below where he is currently at. I mean, he is widely considered now to be a gatekeeper. And whether he's considered to be a high-level gatekeeper anymore, that's up for debate. But if he wants to prove that he's not, he's going to have to probably take on some of that sort of opposition that I have mentioned. And we know that Dillian Whyte, he chastised Chisora publicly for losing to Caballero and basically putting the kibosh on a future possible rematch with him. But say that Whyte does lose in the next year or so, I think it's highly possible that he could opt for a Chisora rematch and try avoid a lull in his career, which can sometimes happen after a contender comes unstuck in a big fight. It would likely be a decent paycheck for both, and if Whyte was able to fight Chisora, who'd been looking good against some okay guys, well, actually it's not too bad a fight, and it would be a fight that the public would want to see. It's a shame they haven't got that rematch made. But I think it would be clear, for most of us at least, that they'd probably have to accept less than A-side money, which, from the sounds of what Eddie Hearn is saying, they just wanted too much. So I can definitely see that if Chisora is carefully managed, that he could still carve out a path for himself in the heavyweight division. And who knows, maybe there is a big fight or two left in him. But some of that is down to him. As we know, in the Caballero fight, he did kind of look a little bit lackadaisical in that it didn't quite seem to have the same edge to him as, say, the Dillian Whyte fight. And that has been a knock on Chisora for his whole career. You never really know which version of Dereck Chisora is going to turn up. The motivated version of Dereck Chisora is a real handful, but Carve had a bit of an easier ride than I think many of us thought he might. But in terms of Chisora's next steps, his potential career moves and options, he could carve out a nice little career for himself. But I guess the questions are, is he willing to potentially accept shorter money than he's used to? Can his ego handle that his career right now at least is firmly on the downswing? I'm sure if he puts his mind to it, he can stop the rot for a while. He can possibly come back and have a big fight, but we'd have to see what he's going to do next. So it's really interesting for me. Will he stick with Eddie Hearn, and will he be able to sort of come back? I mean, he's only, 33, 34? So definitely there's still some time. I'm interested to hear what you think he can do, where he can go from here, and how much you believe that he's really got left in the tank. Drop a comment, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.